Okay, so I'm going to show you how to solder a couple of components into a ready-made PCB. So here is my PCB, which you can see has the copper side on this side, and on this side there is no copper, so this is where the components sit. So we call this side without the copper the component side, and the side with all the copper on it, we call that the solder side. I've identified the two resistors that I'm going to place from my circuit diagram here. I've identified that these two resistors have a value 470 ohms, and if I look at the PCB next to my schematic so that they look the same, I'm looking at it with the copper side down, so the solder side is down, the component side is up. I can see the text where it says Rosny College is on the backward side there, and the holes line up with the existing holes on this diagram. Now I can identify that, okay, these two holes here belong to one of the 470 ohm resistors, and these two holes here also belong to those resistors. What I'm going to do is take my resistor. I've identified that the 470 ohm resistor has a yellow, then a violet, and then a brown colour code on it. I'm going to bend it so that the legs are 90 degrees, like that. Then I place them through the holes. Push it through. Push it so it's nice and close to the board there. And you can see my legs poking through on the outside there. So I bend them apart just so that it won't move now. I can do the other leg, the other resistor. Okay, so these two holes here are for the second 470 ohm resistor. Now it doesn't matter which direction they go in. It might be aesthetically pleasing if you have all of the gold bands on the same end, but it doesn't make any difference to the circuit. Okay, so now I've got my legs through, I can begin soldering. The soldering iron is hot enough. I can tell that it's hot enough because when I touch it on the touch the solder on the tip, it melts the solder and I see a bit of smoke. There's a bit of wet foam. I'm going to clean the tip, so now I can see that the soldering tip there is nice and clean. I've just wiped it on the wet foam. To solder, two things to keep in mind. Got the metal, the copper track and the leg of the resistor. Both need to be hot enough to be able to melt the solder for it to stick to it properly. So in order to make that happen, I just touch it on where they both where the metal of the leg goes through the hole, and I'm going to hold it down there for about 3 seconds and then touch it with the soldering iron, with the solder. Okay, it should. Now, you should see the solder flow over the lead and the track. Okay. About 5 seconds should be long enough to make the metal flow. Okay, now I can see that this last solder that I did here isn't a particularly good one. It is only got a blob of solder on this side and nothing around on this side of the pad, and it doesn't appear to be going up the lead. It's an easy fix. All I need to do is reheat it until it melts again, and if I hold it on there long enough I might see it flow. If it doesn't flow, all I need to do is touch it with the solder again. So that remember, keep in mind the two things for a good solder is a clean soldering iron tip and a hot surface where contact surface where it's soldering. And you should see two solders that look like that. like that. Okay. Now these legs are ready for clipping off, so I get the side cutters, which are these ones here, and just cut them off just above the solder. And there's our resistors soldered, and you can see that they are nice and close to the PCB. They're flat, they're not sticking up off it, and they won't move. They're secured to the board by the solder, as well as electrically connected. Now you can populate the rest of your board and solder them. General rule is do all of the low lying components first, so things like resistors that can fit flat against the board and don't have a very high profile, so they don't stick up off the board very much. Do those first, and then you can do the other components that sit up off the board. So the resistors first, and then you can do the diodes and the capacitors and the transistors.